Welcome to Season 4 of my podcast, Between Us, Stories of Unconscious Bias. I've added the title Between Us as I thought stories of unconscious bias alone was a little too remote. My hope was that the podcast would feature honest and personal stories that raise awareness and educate. Between Us as a main title underlines the intimacy while reinforcing the sense of our collective involvement. Since launching it in early May 2020, the world has again changed. George Floyd died, and Black Lives Matter, which had started in 2013, has become more popular and more widely accepted. Identity politics and culture wars have deepened in the UK and the US. Meanwhile, in other countries, people are being marginalized for their religion and beliefs. The need to understand the subject of unconscious bias has taken on ever more meaning and resonance. As always, I am so grateful to all my wonderful speakers who share their often brave stories and allow us to understand the nuances of this very important subject. Thank you for listening. Hello, I'd like to introduce Emeka Onwubiko. Emeka is the first Nigerian-born footballer to wear the Irish national jersey. So I'm very excited to talk to Emeka and to hear his stories of unconscious bias. Thank you so much for joining me, Emeka.
You're welcome.
So, as I always do with all my speakers, Emeka, we're talking about unconscious bias, and you've kindly agreed to share your stories. But before we even share stories, what do you understand by these two words, unconscious bias?
Um, it's just obviously things that we do unconsciously, or how people obviously can maybe judge us, or as a group or individual. I don't know. People, the prejudice that we can obviously get from people unconsciously, or we can give. It can be us, can be the other way around. Or things that we do unconsciously,
It's about giving and receiving, and
Of
you don't
course,
know
yeah.
that you're giving. You're jumping to these conclusions.
Yeah, of course. It's most things is about giving and receiving. Most things is about the good and the bad, and you know, um, sometimes like you just said about the unconscious bias, it's not just about the unconscious bias towards us. It's about sometimes the unconscious bias that we 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 do towards other people, other
Sure,
humans.
yeah. So what does that look like then? I mean, could you possibly share a story on what that looks like in terms of your unconscious biases, perhaps?
Um, my unconscious bias. I'll probably go towards the football side. That's okay, yeah.
Sure.
So for example, yeah, my unconscious bias could be, me as a coach now. Obviously I'm a coach at the moment. Currently, like I'm a football coach, and my unconscious bias could be the methods of my the methodology of the way I coach. So it could be something reflecting on back on how I played, or my strengths. My strength strategies when I play the game. I kind of maybe sometimes coach the kids to maybe dribble a lot, rather than pass, So because I was a dribbler, I was quite quick, explosive, and fast. So I kind of sometimes, look at players that play similar to the way I did. That makes sense. So basically, if me and you watch a game, like give you an example, me and you watch a game, so say for example, my last team I was coaching with, so we will have like three coaches and we go and watch a game, and then the coaches be like, "Oh, that player was great," and then they will ask me, "What did I think about that player?" I was like, "No, no, no, that player wasn't that good," because my eyes was on the player that was very, very similar to what I was like, you know.
Ah, lovely story. That's a great
Yes,
story because we all
yeah,
do that, don't we? We
of
admire or
course,
we get connected to the people, whoever they might be, who are more like us. Uh,
yeah,
but
yeah,
but let's go back to the beginning, America, because you've told me that you were the first Nigerian-born footballer to wear the Irish national jersey. So I know that you were born in Nigeria. So when
yeah.
did you come to Ireland, and how come you're now in this area of football, and what happened? I mean, the listeners would love to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so if we want to roll it back a little bit, so I'll play it back a bit. So my family moved to Ireland when I was 11 years of age, right? So this was 21 years ago, so early 2000. So most if people your listeners don't know, a lot of Nigerians, a lot of African, a lot of people from different communities moved to Ireland in the early 2000, between 99 and 2000. I don't know. There was just an influx, um, of people from different communities in Ireland at that time. So obviously in Nigeria, I was used to playing a lot on the street. It's just a different culture because we were just kind of playing on the street in Nigeria. We play a lot on the streets. Kids just kind of run around anywhere. Um, at that time. So I must have had, the way, if I give an example of, they say, pianist, when you're learning piano, they got to put over 10,000 hours to be, to be excellent at piano at some stage, like in soccer is the same thing. As a kid in Nigeria, I must have played that much. I must have definitely covered over 10,000 hours in the street, playing, So when I moved to Ireland, we moved to Ireland. I didn't see kids play football on the street. It was very rare, to see kids play on the street. So I didn't know, I didn't understand because that was just my passion. That's all I ever done. And so I didn't know what to be doing or how to meet friends and stuff like that. And then till I was, I don't know, am I going the right part or am I answering your question right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm
Okay,
fascinated, which is why I'm not saying a word. I'm just
okay, that's fine.
visualizing you playing on the streets of Nigeria. Where was this, in Lagos, or where were you?
Yeah, in Just.
Okay. And there
Yeah,
you were
just.
playing on the streets, and did you have football boots? Did you have football clothes? Did you just, who cared? You just went out there and played? I'm just
I
trying to
didn't,
visualize,
yeah, I didn't,
Emeka in Nigeria.
yeah, sometimes I have football boots, sometimes I didn't. Like we played on the street, man. And when you're that kid, when you're a child, I think in Africa a lot of kids play without shoes, anyways. I think
And so did you. Did you first
yeah,
learn football without shoes?
yeah, without shoes, yeah, without
And then
shoes,
how did that feel when you had to wear shoes to play football? Because that's completely different feel, isn't it? To how you kick a ball, for example.
It's probably better for you to be honest, starting without it because because your feet become stronger. You know what I'm saying? Because it's making a lot of contact with the ground. The way when you wear, you're more connected to the ground. That makes sense, when you wear boots, it's a little bit, the feelings are a little bit different, but probably a little bit more of a luxury, if I'm honest. It's good to kind of, yeah. It's nice to play. If I reflect back, I kind of enjoyed it without it, to be honest with you. But um, obviously, like when you, okay, how do I put it? How do I put this in? So when you play without shoes, it's basically like not having a lot as a child. Say for example, most successful people never really had a lot as kids. So that kind of inspired them, motivated them to do a lot more. It's how about how you deal with those, how you turn those situations of not having a lot into having the surplus. I mean, that motivated you to do a lot. So I was in that situation. That example is like having no shoes, and you have a feeling of knowing what having no shoes is like. So when you do have shoes, you're like more grateful and more like, appreciative of having that.
That's a fabulous story. I just want to pause that thought for me to appreciate it, Jamaica, because this is about our unconscious biases, which is what you're saying. You're saying, if I were to paraphrase what you said, um, you did not have that much wealth. So playing football was barefoot. And then you arrive in Ireland, and of course you have shoes, and it's simply literally shoes, no shoes. And you see that as more, and you see that as an extra privilege. But what that does unconsciously is it drives you to work harder. That's what you're saying. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Yeah,
And
I
that's
think
incredible. And you're
I
saying
think what
people who, what was the phrase you used? People who come from poverty, people who struggle, I think you used the word. People who struggle achieve more. Is that what you said?
100%, because without struggle, there's no success. That's fact. Obviously, that said that line there. Whoever that mentioned, whoever that said that line first is a genius. Because there's a struggle. It's more beautiful when you struggle in anything. It's like, let's say for example, like when I start playing football, I kind of tend to put on a little bit of extra weight, extra pounds, because I'm not actively pushing myself. So when you go for a run and you move your body, even though it's a little bit painful, it's a little bit like, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but when you finish that run, you feel unbelievable. You feel like, you're in, your everything, dopamine, everything level increases. Like, you're like, I'm great. I'm delighted that I feel good that I done that. So I feel like anything that has to do with failure and struggle, it's a good thing, because without those things, I don't think you don't really know what success is.
Right. But then let's go back to when you're, say, 12 or 13 years old in Ireland,
Yeah,
and or maybe even 12. You've only been around for a year in this foreign country where the weather is cold, and it's very
yeah.
different to what you've known all your life. How does that work in terms of your unconscious biases and how you're interacting with others? Do you have any stories you can share there?
Um, I remember coming for sure, like, and realizing, wow, it's cold, as a child, you know, I remember, like, but then I think as a child, you adapt very quickly. I think humans are very good at adapting. Obviously, like, it was cold, but I quickly adapted. You know what I mean? Even my Irish accent was like very, very strong at a young age. I just picked up everything. You pick up everything unconsciously. So, if the story I would tell is definitely like, coming now and having to wear extra layers of clothes when in Nigeria you never really did. And I remember, like, okay, so for example, I remember there was a time that Nigeria national team came to play Ireland, right?
Hmm.
And they stayed in the hotel that was close to where I was, the Nigerian national team. And obviously I was obsessed with some of the Nigerian players like JJ Okocha, Kanu, and all these guys. And I remember going into him, to JJ Okocha, because obviously he was my favorite player. So I was wearing a jumper, right? Like a fleece jumper. So I was only a little kid. So I said to him, "Can you sign my top?" Because I seen every kid getting their top signed. But me not realizing they have a fleece on, so you can't actually see what.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So
Oh,
obviously, in Ireland, everyone wore jacket and fleeces and stuff like that. So it's just those kind of stories. So you're used to getting your stuff signed, like, a top sign or whatever. But I just totally forgot I was wearing a fleece. And he looked at me and he says, "Oh, do you know you have a fleece? I can't sign it on that." So then he gave me a paper and he signed on the paper. But just those little things like that. So it
sure.
kind of makes you laugh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then tell us a little bit more about your unconscious bias stories in relation to, getting into football and getting to the level that you represented the country. You were wearing the Irish international jersey. I mean, what does that mean? Because here you are a foreigner visually by your name, by what you look like, and yet you are accepted within the country in terms of representing your country now. So what does that
Yeah.
mean in terms of your unconscious biases? How did you feel?
So, say for example, obviously, like, the first school I was in, I remember, like, obviously Ireland. Okay, Ireland doesn't have a lot of, like, you know, uh, people from different ethnicity back in, like, say, from 2000. There was only a very tiny, it's very only very small. You might hear the odd story about someone from, anywhere in Africa or Asia, or you know, Eastern European in Ireland. So I remember being in school. I was the only black kid in school. you know, and the first time I was in a couple of classes, and some of them were touching my hair as if I was an alien. I always tell that story. It's funny, like, but that's where Ireland were, like, at that time. You know what I mean? Like, that there wasn't many people that looked different from being white. Most people were white. 99% of people were white. You know what I mean? So in those areas. So, but I remember being in the school and the PE teacher, we were playing. If I can vaguely remember, I was like in a school compound, and at lunchtime the football is out, and you play football or whatever you want to play. There's different things going on. So I remember playing football, and obviously it's one of the kids must have come back and told the PE teacher, like, "Oh, who's this kid? He's just miles ahead of everyone, So the PE teacher called me and then she was like, "Oh, would you like to play for the school?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I went and played for the school one game, and she was like, "You're way too good for this school, like football wise, and I need to get you a club." So she got me like a local club. It's in a place called Swords, which is north of Dublin,
Right.
in Ireland. So I went to the club, and then I don't know, I played a little bit, and the club said to me, "No, you're too good for our team, so I need to get you a different team." So I must have went to about 3 or 4 teams that kept moving me up. So then I went to this other team. That's where all the elite players in Ireland were, like the international players, or the future players that they're kind of well respected in the country which was called St. Kevin's Football Club. So then I went there, and that's where everything started for me in regard to my rise in the country, because then you were playing with the best players. And then if I can go back a little bit, we went to a tournament when we were under 13s. We went to a tournament in Liverpool. And this is where all the big Premiership clubs started to notice me. I think I scored like 12 goals in 6 games. And there's a football club in England called Manchester City Football Club, So they were quite a big club, So they came in and approached me, spoke to my family, spoke to my managers, and blah blah blah. Tried to get me over, and that's when the international setup was like, "Who's this kid? We don't even know who he was, And he's going to Manchester City, So that's where my first call up came, So the moral of the story is that sports was able to open the doors that wouldn't have ever been there. You know what I mean?
That's a wonderful story. No, because
Yeah.
what's interesting is that at all levels, if I think about unconscious bias under that heading, at all levels, right from when your PE teacher saw you at school, everyone saw you for your ability, your actual football skill, rather than anything else like the color of your skin.
Yeah.
Everyone noticed the skill and nothing else, which I think is wonderful, because we have heard many a story where judgments are made on people because they look different, or because of their sexuality or their religion or their gender or any of that, rather than being acknowledged for whatever skill they might have. And so I love this aspect of what you've just shared. But share another story with us, Emeka.
Well, I had a couple of stories, okay, I put up a tweet the other day that obviously went viral, that everyone is obviously getting in touch with me about, and that tweet was like obviously about my experience about racism in Ireland, you know what I mean, and how I dealt with it, because there was another Nigerian kid who plays for Ireland who has 2 nationalities like myself, a Nigerian passport, dual nationality, Nigerian passport, and Irish passport, and he decided to play for Ireland as well, So he was getting a lot of racist abuse online, and he plays in a team in Scotland, So I basically tweeted to send a message to him that you've got to be strong. That's how I dealt with it. You know what I mean? That's how I dealt with it. I kind of so the moral of the story is that obviously, like, I was playing football in Ireland at that, I was playing Ireland at that age. I had a couple of international players who were in the same team as me. When we go back to our local clubs, our clubs, and we play against each other, they would say to me, "Go back to your country, you're black. Go back to your country, you're black. If black, see, I don't want to say the word cunt, but like if you know what I mean, go back to your country, or you black bastard." They say that a lot. It's quite a common theme, So I was quite shocked because I'm sitting in the same hotel with this guy wearing the same Ireland jersey, but when I'm not wearing that, he's saying that to me. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
So
What did that look like? I mean, how did you feel? What did you do?
So basically, the way I look at it, right, is if I'm not doing well, I'm not successful in my field, right? No one ever says anything to you. People just leave you there because you're not doing anything. You understand? When you're doing something good, and when people see that you're kind of, example would be like, in the game, obviously I was playing well, and he was trying to slow me down by saying something like that, because obviously, I was playing quite well, and how I dealt with after that really pushed me. I was very angry. I didn't want to obviously I didn't want to fight, So basically in that game I ended up scoring 2 goals. You know what I mean? That was my way of saying this is my way of showing you that I am better than what you're trying to say that I am,
No, I was just thinking what's interesting is I just wanted to pick up on something you've just said. Um, because what I'm hearing is that what you said earlier on is the fact that if you're not doing anything, you said, so if you're not successful or if you're Mr. Average, then people might leave you alone. It's
100%.
because you are being successful in X. So in your story, it's football, that the other person who was calling you whatever they were saying and asking you to go back to your country or whatever, they were feeling insecure. So that's their story, their unconscious biases, because they were
Yes.
threatened by you.
Yeah.
And by being threatened by you, they only knew the only way to show it was by being abusive and being rude to you.
Of course. And
That is
then
their unconscious bias. So I find that really interesting.
and the thing about it is, it's everyone has their own way of dealing with the situation. Because I'm not the only one. Obviously, everyone has a story. You might even have a story on unconscious bias. Everyone has a story, like and some people's story are just worse than some. I might think my story was bad, and then someone tells me something like, "Oh God," I thought, So the thing is, the best way to answer people who don't believe in you, people who say, certain things to you, it's just massive success. You know what I mean? If you have a massive, if you can take in a positive way and be like, and just be super successful, just use that pain in a positive way. I that's just the way I've always dealt with it. Like, I don't know if I'm making any sense there. The best revenge is massive success, really.
I love it.
Um,
The best revenge is massive success. But the
yeah, it
problem is not
is.
all of us have that opportunity or that skill to have massive success. So it makes it much harder for many of us. You're lucky. You're blessed with a gift, and of course the fact that growing up in Nigeria, you had your 10,000, 20,000, many thousands of hours of really
Yeah,
improving on that gift,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which was
yeah,
lucky. There's also a bit of
yeah,
luck in there, isn't there? Or would you
yeah,
not agree?
yeah. It's a bit of luck in that, and obviously, like I said, everyone has, like, we have, you know, if you're a doctor, if you're, I don't know, a scientist, if you're a presenter, whatever, like, everyone has their own gift. That we all have a gift, like, I mean, God has, I don't think we came to this planet with no gift, like, I mean, you know, it's up to you to find it, what I mean, and then use it, So, football was my gift, was my, something I do with ease, something that someone finds challenging, I find it easy, So when I find, like, I was even, I say to some of the young students and stuff, if you find something that you do easily that everyone finds challenging, then that is your gift. You know what I'm saying? So, and then it's up to you to
Lovely.
put the and then it's up to you to put the hours in. Everything is hard work. Everything all goes back to hard work. I give an example, like, you know, I personally train people as well, when I do have time and stuff like that. And sometimes when people will buy a lot of, like, tablets, slimming tablets, and buy a lot, spend thousands, hundreds on just those things to kind of, obviously, maybe, they're not happy with the way their body is, and they think they can move a bit better. Maybe they feel like, if I cut down, I can be able to move a little bit better, I can be more flexible, whatever. But not realizing that at the end of the day, those supplements ain't gonna do nothing if we don't go and put the hard work in. You know what I'm saying? So no matter how
I
much
get you.
talent no matter how much talent we're blessed with, you still have to go and work hard. you know.
So
So
share a story with us, Emeka. You're a coach, right? So tell us a little bit about that. Who are you coaching? You run a school. What can you? Because we don't know. I want you, for us listeners, to know um, what you're doing now. You're not playing. You're not playing for Ireland at the moment professionally. You're
no,
doing
I'm not
something
playing.
else. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I'm in a transition from playing to coaching. And
Right.
my transition right now is obviously, when you're playing, it's kind of about yourself. You're trying to get yourself right. You know, and then the transition from playing to coaching is when you're coaching, your energy is to someone else. Sorry, to help someone else. So when you're playing, you're kind of helping yourself. So I find, like, coaching is a little bit different in regarding to, like, I get excitement. I get motivated when I see someone else do well. I think that's what we're here in the world to do. When you get older, you help younger ones. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's an easy transition for me because, to go into coaching. Because that's what I love doing. I love to see other people do well. So, I I tried to coach in Ireland with a couple of clubs, and it's just kind of a bit challenging for me to kind of break through. So I decided to open my own academy, where we have kids of all ages from like 7 to teenage, all the way to 19 or something, you know. So I have a vast range of experiences with different age group. You know, we got boys, girls, whatever, every nationality. You know, we you know, and I'm proud of doing it because I'm doing it for like I've been doing it only 2 years. You know, and then part time ish, I work in a college where I work with students. It's a college in Ireland. It's called Bray Institute of Further Education. It's like an institute, you know. So I coach soccer there as well. So I get a chance to hopefully inspire all generation, all ages, you know, and not just by me talking about my past, but obviously by action as well.
That's
Understand? So like,
wonderful.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but you know, you talk about action, of course, but recently in Ireland, we
Yeah,
had a death quite recently,
yes,
and I think the individual was a football player, George Nikencho.
yeah,
So what you know, and there's I think also a wonderful film that's been made quite recently by I think it was the UEFA who made a documentary called Outraged that talks about football uniting to confront discrimination. So you know you've been wonderful in that you've turned discrimination around and made it work for you. But you also very gently mentioned that you people did discriminate against you, um, and you just didn't allow it to happen to you. But that's easier said than done for most of us. So how do you manage? You know, what do you do to manage your unconscious biases?
I think number one is that's just you need to be strong, right? You need to be strong, you know, because okay, like the unconscious bias is always going to happen. It's been happening thousands of years. You know, if it's not war. It's race. It's if it's not race, it's always something with humans. You know, we're always in conflict. You know, you know, and you know, we just have to be. You know, I don't. You know, I came up as a child. I've always come up with like no making no excuses. If I succeed, it's like it's all me. If I fail, it's all me kind of attitude, mentality.
Is that how you
And
were brought up? Was that your mom and dad who instilled that in you?
yeah, 100%. And obviously, sports does that to you as well. You know, that's why I think every parent should have their kids doing some kind of sport. You know, now I'm not saying that every child. So again, when you go into sports, when a child goes into sports, they're basically sometimes a mirror of their coach. If that makes sense,
Hmm.
because you train with your coach so much that if your coach doesn't have that mentality and instill that kind of mentality in you, or your parents, if the coach or parent don't do it, don't give you that mentality of like not blaming anyone for your mistakes or anything like that, or using an excuse as a reason why you never achieved whatever you wanted to achieve. I think then you obviously you don't have the education. Does that make sense? You don't have no one has ever told you that, you know. So you kind of navigate in your way, you know. So I've always been, you know, that's just how they brought me up. You know, never make any excuse. If it goes well, take it. If it doesn't go well, take it. You
That's
know,
also your unconscious bias, isn't it? If you
one
think
hundred
about it,
percent.
that is your upbringing. That's in your DNA. That you can't
Yeah,
make excuses. You've got to take responsibility for your actions, both the good and the bad, and the ugly for that
hundred
matter.
percent. Man, at the moment, like, okay, at the moment, I'm still young, like in coaching field, like and stuff like that. I'm still young in life, you know. I'm 31, like going on 32. Like I'm still like young in this game, you know. And I've I've made a lot of mistakes. I've failed so many times. And I'm actually like, you know, sometimes I look at myself like 10 years ago. I don't like to look back. I don't like to look back. I'm like, right. I'm not as successful in people's eye like I was 10 years ago, but in itself, I've learned so much in the journey. Does that make sense? I've actually come out a better person than I was 10 years ago, even though my success is not as it's not in front of people. People don't see, obviously, you know, what people see is not what I see, you know. So even though I've tried a couple of new things that I've gone into an experience where I've never been before, you know, so you know, I've learned a lot from whatever failure. I've learned more of my failures than my success.
Oh,
It's
that's very
weird.
powerful. You've learned
Yeah.
more from your failures than from your success.
100%. because I'm always asking questions. When you're failing, when things are not going right, you ask questions, right? When things are going perfectly fine, sometimes you don't ask questions. It's like your car. When you're driving your car and everything is fine, everything looks good to you, you don't ask any questions. When your car breaks down, you're like, oh, mechanic, what's wrong with the car? And then you start servicing it. So I feel like, as humans, it's the same. When things are when things are going so well, we don't ask no questions. So I feel like I've learned a lot from my failures, hugely, because I've now started asking questions, reading, looking at other people, how they dealt with the situation, and overall, it's making me a lot better human being. So
Oh, that's wonderful. That's such humanity and thoughtfulness in your approach towards life. So that's how we challenge our unconscious biases. We all will have failings or failures or challenges or however we want to see it. But it's about learning from all of those and turning around to work for us. That's great. Emeka Onwubiko, thank you so very much for your
no,
sharing your stories on unconscious bias.
absolutely, Smita, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, Between Us, Stories of Unconscious Bias. I'm Smita Tharoor. If you like this episode, please do share with a friend or colleague. It's only by sharing that more people will know of it. You can find out about previous episodes and the next ones by following me on Twitter or Instagram @Smita Tharoor. The next episode will be in a week's time.